Hey Fuse, how are you doing? Like for real, how are you doing? My name is Jason Harding and I get the privilege to be the Fuse pastor for the Crossing in Keokuk, Iowa. Have you ever struggled to see the big picture of a circumstance you were in? Seeing the big picture is difficult for anybody. Why? Because we are wired to think about what we feel, experience, and what we are going through right now. It's hard to think a lot about what's ahead. This series that we are starting today gives us this opportunity to see the big picture. We're going to be looking at a guy in the Bible whose name is Joseph. And in the next few weeks, Joseph's story will show us the different things that happened in his life. Weren't just isolated events, but instead steps towards something bigger. And the same things can be true in our life. So right now, let's jump over to Andrew from the 48th Street campus and let's look at what the big picture is right now.
What is up, everybody? In case you don't know me, I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody I know all about Jesus. And I'm so grateful that you are taking the time to join in online. You are showing God how much your faith really means to you, no matter the circumstances. It's amazing to see that even though some of the churches might be closed, that you're still tuning in. Let's not downsize that. I know some of you are probably thinking in your head, well, I'm just sitting in bed in the same clothes I've worn the past 2 or 3 days. It's kind of gross, but anyway, you're building the kingdom of God. Make sure you tell your parents that same excuse too whenever they tell you to get up and finally get showered today. We're going through this crazy phase of life right now where some of our Fuse pods still might be closed, and I know some of them are getting ready to open, which is exciting, but that doesn't matter. Wherever you're watching this right now, you are making a church. You are creating a church, and that's amazing. It's amazing just to see that you're still staying up to date watching these Fuse videos that show your spiritual maturity. I know every one of your Fuse pastors across all of our locations are so proud of you guys. And I know, speaking for myself, I'm so proud of you guys as well for making the decision to still stay connected. It really is an amazing thing. As for myself, I don't always get to speak in Fuse, but in this ministry, it's super important to me, and I love it. I love getting to speak here because this is kind of where I got my start. I love getting to hang out with you guys, even if it is through a screen. It's amazing. You guys are at an amazing phase of life where you have so much ahead of you, and the possibilities of what you can accomplish are just endless. They're honestly limitless. Plus, when we hung out in person, I remember watching all my 48th Street crew, shout out to them, that's my home church, showing me what it means to be important things like an elite Fortnite player or how to make cool TikToks. Because of your guidance, I am now so much better than I was before in the areas of gaming and, dancing and those important things. So thank you. That information is irreplaceable to me. I appreciate all the wisdom you guys gave me in those areas, and I hopefully can return that favor today. Maybe just a little bit or maybe a lot. We'll see how it goes. You see, we are starting a brand new series called The Big Picture, where we'll be covering the size of my head. Just kidding. In all seriousness, this series is a 5-week series, which is longer than normal, and it's just to focus on the stories of Joseph, which just happens to be one of my favorite stories in the entire Bible. So I am pumped that I get to speak to you guys about this, and it means a ton to me. But before we dive into our actual story, I've got an interesting question for you guys. How often have you guys ever used one of these things? I assume not very much anymore. And if you do use a magnifying glass often, well, what in the world do you use it for? Is the follow-up question, especially at your age. However, when I was a little kid, I loved messing with magnifying glasses. I thought it was so cool to look at things up close and to see all the details of things. And that's what I used it for, about 10% of the time. And 10% might be a little liberal. The other 90% of the time, I thought they were cool just because I could melt things with them. And how you held it at just the right angle and you got the sunlight and things would start to burn up? I just thought that was the coolest. Let's just say we never had any problems around my house, if you know what I mean, with ants. They were mostly burnt up. Rest in peace to my little mighty friends, though. They're in a better place right now. But could you imagine living your whole life looking through a magnifying glass? Having to see everything up close with so much deep detail? You'd miss so much going on around you. And instead, you'd be focused on the little pointless things like, let's say, the details of blades of grass, or maybe carrying a conversation with someone and just looking at a pimple on their nose as you talk to them. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I also know so many of us, including myself, often give our lives that same perspective. Here's what I mean. We spend so much time focusing on those little details of one day that it causes us to miss the joy and the blessing that is this entire life. Did you know that there are 86,400 seconds in a day and almost 605,000 seconds in a week? Yet we often let one comment from someone that lasts, let's say, 10 seconds dictate our mood for thousands upon thousands of other seconds. Seems kind of ridiculous when you think about it, but it's honestly a real thing. This happens in so many areas of our life, and it has a ripple effect with so many groups of people as well. I think perspective is huge when it comes to this, guys, especially for this topic. Your perspective of things can affect your friends at school, it can affect people at church, and especially during this season when we're stuck at home more often than not, it can affect your family, guys. Let's take a quick journey and picture this crazy, super unlikely, ridiculous scenario with me that I'm sure none of us have been in. You've been stuck at home, not allowed to leave, you're not allowed to see your friends that often, and one of your siblings who is maxed out with boredom just decides to come on into your room when you are minding your own business. They decide, hey, I'm gonna mess with them because, why not? Sounds fun in their head. So they barge into your room, they're making a ton of annoying noises, and they start messing with you when you are just chilling, kind of minding your own business. Then you get mad, you get into a fight with them. Your parents come in to break up the fight and start yelling at you and them, and now you get even more mad. You get into a fight with your parents, they ground you, they take away your games, they take away your phone, and they take away your freedom for, let's say, an entire week. You are now super mad, and your whole day and maybe even week is ruined, all because that one brief moment turned into so much of a bigger deal for not only you, but your entire family. But guys, here's a fun fact. If you would have mentally taken a step back and have seen the bigger picture, your actions could have avoided all of that. Missing that bigger picture causes a lot of frustrating and hurt within our families and within ourselves. If this scenario sounded familiar, don't worry, guys. You aren't the only one. Trust me, in my household, it gets a little crazy too. And Joseph, the guy I told you about at the beginning, he had his own family dilemmas as well. Speaking of Joseph, let's jump into our Bibles and see what was going on here. Guys, today we're going to be in Genesis 37, 3-7. And this is what it says. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him even more. Listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. Let's break down this story now. In this story, Joseph was the youngest son of a man named Jacob, and Joseph had a lot of older brothers, like 10, so we're talking a pretty big family here. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob, the dad, gave him a special gift. It was the beautiful robe. This created hatred by his brothers because their father clearly loved Joseph more than the rest of them, and he was showing it by things like that. Joseph's father didn't even try to hide it. Imagine your parents come in and they walk around and they're just saying, wow, your brother or sister is so much better than you, especially your younger brother who is walking around right now and he's saying some pretty crazy things at the time. Talk about a tension-creating situation. Then the situation gets even worse when Joseph tells his brothers about the dream, where one day they would all bow down to him. When he said all of his brothers were the bundles of grain and his would be in the center, he was basically telling them that one day they would all bow down to him. And just a reminder, this is their littlest brother. At this point, all the brothers became furious. Looking back at all these verses though, one thing really jumped out to me. Everybody in this story so far was missing the bigger picture. They weren't paying attention to how they were negatively affecting their other family members, especially by what they were saying or doing. And just like that happened back then, it's so true in so many situations, even today when we find ourselves in tension-filled times. This is all rooted from us thinking about ourselves, causing us to miss the bigger picture. Jacob, Joseph's dad, let us off by picking favorites. You know, it's probably not the best parenting strategy, to say the least, to show such favoritism to Joseph by giving him gifts and extra love, especially since he wasn't giving it to his other sons at the time. He didn't think about how his actions could affect his whole family. He was missing the bigger picture. Joseph then added to the fire by sharing his dreams with his brothers by saying that they were going to bow down to him. Now, Joseph could have been pure-hearted when he shared this and not meant any harm, but him sharing this obviously would upset his brothers. He wasn't thinking about their feelings. He was missing the big picture. And lastly, Joseph's brothers were selfish by letting anger take over their minds. They felt mistreated. They could have chosen to take the high road and realize maybe Joseph meant no harm by sharing this dream, or maybe their father is just going through a phase of favoritism. But no, guys, they let anger lead their actions instead, and things go downhill quick later in this story. All his brothers missed the bigger picture. Everyone in this family could have gotten along much better if they would have just thought about maybe somebody else's feelings, or maybe more than their tiny singular picture. If they would have thought about how their actions would impact the other members of their family, they could have gotten along so much better. Let's be real here. The way we view ourselves and the way we treat our families has an impact on them too. It's not just about us. Missing that bigger picture can cause a lot of frustration and hurt within our families. So what's next then? What are some things you and me can do to see the bigger picture? The first one might seem kind of obvious, but I think it's funny how we often miss out on it. First, guys, I just want us to be aware. Ask yourself before you jump to anger and judgment, how is this going to affect others besides just me? Is this going to cause more harm than good? Is this me being selfish, or is this me putting others first like the Bible tells us to? I know this isn't always an easy thing to do, but I think we just need to be more aware of our situations, and it can just do so much good. Us taking some time to gather our thoughts and think about others' feelings can be a huge step towards what actually comes out of our mouths. I'd rather us be the wise person when we speak rather than the first person when we speak. And that all comes from being aware of our situations and other situations before we jump to a conclusion. The second thing, guys, take a step for change. Knowing what's right doesn't matter unless you actually do it. I'll say that again for the people in the back. Knowing what's right doesn't matter unless you actually do it. If you're going to keep on saying, I'm going to think about others more and not be as selfish, but never actually do it, then what is the point? In order to make a change for your life, which will then lead to a change in others' lives, you have to take responsibility for your past actions and start letting your actions line up with your thoughts, guys. You need to focus on making a change going forward. I think if we can take these two super simple steps, it can dramatically change our lives and everybody's lives around us. Remember at the beginning when I said the possibilities are limitless at your age? I wasn't kidding. Each one of you has a chance to make a huge shift in our society and showing how much you value others first and how much you can make this world so much of a better place. Guys, as I wrap up, I just want to be honest. I needed to hear this just as much as you did. I needed that reminder to not be narrow-minded, especially with all the things going around in the world right now. There's so many issues related to racism and people being hurt. Me sitting here and just thinking about being helpful is one thing, and me actually doing something is completely different. I want to be a part of the change. I want to be an example for others to not think so narrow-minded, but instead see the bigger picture. I don't want to live my life through that magnifying glass, focusing on the negative little details. I want to see life for all it has to offer and the great limitless canvas that it is. Guys, I'm not a huge art fan, but there's a specific painting that I love so much because this painting reminds me of what's important. When you look at this painting up close, it just looks like a huge mess. It has a bunch of little pointless paint splatters. There's not much there, but when you stand back and you start to just really look at this picture, it becomes this beautiful piece of artwork. I want us to not look at things from a small-minded and selfish perspective, because when we do that, our lives can become a huge mess, just like when we looked at that painting up close. But when we stand back and we realize that God is in control and that He loves us and we should try to love others that same way, our lives can become this beautiful piece of work. Don't miss the opportunity to see the bigger picture, guys, this week. I hope you can make an impact with yourself, with your family, and with your community.
Right now, I want you to think about your actions this past week. Were they always thinking of others, or are most of your actions selfish? I've got to be honest, this is a struggle for me. I so often am selfish. I do a lot of things for me, and it's hard sometimes to think of others. But when I am selfish, it's not what's best for me or my family. What's best is when we are all thinking of others. And even if no one else in my family is thinking of me, it's still best for me to be thinking of them first. I'd imagine it's the same for you. What's best for you is when you are thinking of others. You see, Jesus' entire life on this earth was thinking of others. He died on the cross because He was thinking of you, because He loved you. And because of that love that Jesus had for us, it's time to change our lives and start following Jesus. It's time to look at our actions and how we treat our parents, our brothers or sisters, or even our worst enemy. And it's time to start putting them first.
Hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you, our Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. Yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is. Nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is, the name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is, the name of Jesus.
Hey Few, so glad you joined us today. What's one thing you learned today? Right now, go and share that with your parents or text your small group leader and then go live it out. So glad you joined us. We will see you all next week.